The FBI and the ATF are now investigating a string of at least 5 fires at predominantly black churches in the South, all of them occurring since the white supremacist attack on a historic black church in Charleston nearly 2 weeks ago. 3 of the fires in Knoxville, Tennessee, Macon, Georgia, and Charlotte, North Carolina are being investigated as arson. But investigators have yet to establish a cause for the other fires. At this point, we have many more questions and answers, and joining me to fill in some of what we know, MSNBC national correspondent Joy Reid, who's been investigating the story. All right.
Yep.
This has been something I'd seen sort of on social media in the last 5 or 6 days.
Yep.
And you start to feel that feeling of like in the movie when they start putting the pins in the map of the serial killer, like, whoa, what's going on here? But also, the South is big. There are tons of churches, and fires happen a lot. So what do we know right now?
Yeah, who is burning black churches is now a hashtag that is all over the place and trending, and people are putting these together in their minds because of the time proximity. So you have the attack on that South Carolina church on the 17th of June.
Charleston, yeah.
In Charleston. Then on the 21st of June, you have the first of these church fires that takes place in Knoxville, Tennessee. And that is one of the 3 that's being investigated as an arson. Then 2 days later, you have a second fire, this one in Macon, Georgia, in which I believe $250,000 worth of damage has been done. The church is almost completely totaled. Then the next day, you have yet another fire. This one is in Charlotte, North Carolina. That takes place. 2 days after that, on the 26th, you then have a 4th fire at a Baptist church in Warrenville, South Carolina. And then shortly thereafter, there are 2 more, one in Gibson City, Tennessee, and one in Tallahassee. Now, here's the caveat when you walk it back. I did email with the FBI spokesman today. Right now, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is investigating each of these fires individually. They don't have anything right now to tie them together, other than the obvious proximity. They're all in the South. But if you go through and look, they're all different in terms of denomination. The first church was a Seventh-day Adventist church that burned. The second church is a Church of Christ church. Then you have a Baptist church and another Baptist church. So denominationally, they're not similar. The churches aren't necessarily tied in any way that's obvious, other than they have predominantly black populations. And of course, you have this history of particularly the Klan throughout the South sending a message to black people with 2 things: the Confederate flag being a very potent symbol of hate and stay away from here, and the burning and bombing of black churches. So it's very potent in the minds of a lot of people.
And just to be clear, because I've seen lists of 5 or 6 or 7, there are 3 that we have confirmed that are being investigated as arson.
Right, and there's a 4th that's a potential arson, but they're still too early in the investigation. There are 2 of them, one of which is thought to potentially be a lightning strike fire. That's the one in Tallahassee, and there's one that may be electrical issues with the church itself. So those 2 right now are not being investigated as arsons, but 3 are for sure. A 4th one could become an arson investigation depending on what they find.
And obviously, we should also say so you know, in terms of the steps of what we're looking at here, the first threshold is, were these fires accidental? And some of them they may be. Others are being investigated arson, even if they are found to be arson definitively, right? Then there's a question of what is the motivation, and we can imagine there could be a lot of motivations that are not a white supremacist terror essentially being waged against these congregations. Now, presumably, that's something the ATF and FBI are going to be looking into?
They're going to look at it. I don't know if you'll recall, not long ago in Colorado, there was an NAACP incident where the building was shared by a tax office that turned out to be the actual target. So the federal government, the feds...
And that's a good cautionary tale, because when you hear explosion, a sort of unexploded, improvised explosive device happened outside the building in NAACP, and there was federal investigators were worried about this could be that. It proved to be a different target.
And federal authorities are very, very notoriously cautious. And then we were just saying in the break, I was thinking of the fire that's still under investigation as a potential arson of Michael Brown Sr.'s church, and that took place in Ferguson, Missouri. And of course, Missouri is known to have at least 4 very large active Ku Klux Klan organizations. We also know that South Carolina has a pretty large Klan organization that's actually planning a march, as you reported earlier. So we know that there is plenty of hate activity. I spoke with someone from the Southern Poverty Law Center. They are also looking at it because there is tons of hate activity. And by the way, groups don't necessarily have to be actively colluding physically, because you have so much online manifestations of sort of hate group behavior. And if you compare what they're trying to do now with what they used to do back in the 20s and 30s when these things would happen, back then you could locate it almost all in the Klan. You had one organization that metastasized across the South. Now you have all these little atomized organizations. The Council of Conservative Citizens is here. You have another white nationalist group there. So people like Dylan Roof can actually organize themselves lone wolf style, almost the way ISIS does, using social media or online. So it's going to be really a complicated investigation to piece together, even if you figure out who all of the culprits are.
All right, Joy Reid, thank you for that.